Welcome to Kansas City Real Talk, brought to you by KCRAR. I'm Bobbi Howe.
I'm Alex Scaring.
You feel better now that you can breathe?
Oh my gosh, I do. You have to remember though. So I was holding my breath for like 10 seconds, which is not really a big thing for me. I basically got a degree in breath control. So you have to remember that.
Yes, but I don't.
Yeah.
I could see your eyes. They were starting to get a little big, and I was like, can I drag this out longer?
I can hold my breath for a long time, but I can also be dramatic. It's a whole thing.
This is new information.
How
Alex
are
can be
you?
dramatic. I'm fabulous. How are you, sir?
Doing just fine. I wanted to tell you, I'm having today is a really good day.
Okay.
Because number one, I get to see you and I get to see Jessica Thomas, who we're going to talk about in just a second. Two of my favorite people in the business.
I feel like we're being set up right now.
It's true. And then later on in the day, I get to see more of my favorite people in the business. I've got a happy hour with a group of 6 people that we get together about quarterly, all different companies, all different areas of the city. And it's such a fun time. And I especially with all of the changes that we've got going on in the industry, it's such a great reminder of the community that we have, and we're all going through similar things, and everybody around me seems so positive, and I feel positive, and it's a beautiful thing. I think that's like a great reminder of the fact that the people that you surround yourself with are whatever their attitudes are about things, that's what your attitude's going to be too. If you're surrounded by a bunch of people that are freaking out and they're very negative about the situation and they're not taking a leadership mentality about it, you're probably going to be really stressed out.
Yeah, 100%.
In a time when it's natural to be stressed, but if you're more stressed than you need to be, that's an issue.
Right.
You know?
Well, it's funny that you say that. There's 2 things to that. The reason I think that's funny that you say that is while we're here recording right now, there's a class going on here being taught, and the students were on break when I arrived, and I heard some of them talking outside. I said, I guess I just have to become a listing agent now because I could never become a buyer's agent. And I was just like, great. I love that you're freaking out over this, but you're just like, my way of succeeding in this industry is just to be a listing agent. Well, we've taught that for years. It is preferential to be a listing agent over a buyer's agent, but we've been saying that for decades. That's nothing new. And yet you're going to have to know how to be a buyer's agent in this market. But the other part of this is this time last week, I was in Chicago for a day and a half with some meetings with a combined task force between the Finance Committee of the National Association and the Strategic Planning Committee, trying to figure out where we're going to come up with some of this money that we have to come up with the $418 million. And it was great. But just the attitude of everybody in that room is just so positive. And here's how we're going to move forward. And tough decisions have to be made, but it doesn't have to be tough decisions for the rest of our career.
Right.
Just the next few years are going to be tougher just for a variety of reasons. But we're going to make it through. We're going to be okay. But it's a change. We're going to have to get used to the change. In several different ways, we're going to have some changes, but it's going to be okay. And if you approach those changes from a place of calmness, from a place of patience, and just understanding we're all going to get through this together, we are all going to get through this together.
And God, that's always been true too. The people that are most successful in this business are the people that can handle change really effectively. It's always this joke about how realtors don't handle change well. And that's true for a lot of people. But for those people, that impacts their business.
Right.
The people that are successful are the people that adjust, and they're flexible and they're adaptable. And that's what we need to have the mindset of right now.
But we blame realtors for not wanting to change, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when we disc analysis, our population, 68 to 70% lead with their S. S's biggest fear is change. So a majority of our society hates change in and of itself. So our clients are not going to like some of these changes. We're going to have to be calm as we walk them through this, because for a lot of them, their natural hesitation is going to be like, well, I've bought and sold for the last 30 years. I've never had to do that. Great. We've been in the business for 30 years. We've never had to do it. We're all learning together, but it's okay. We don't have to freak out.
Yep.
And I guess we need to take a step back. Some background information for those of you who may not be up to speed on what we're talking about right now. If you've been living under a rock, earlier this year, the National Association of Realtors settled in a class action lawsuit that's going to impact some of the ways we do business, including how we represent buyers, how we communicate offers of compensation. NAR has a bunch of resources at NAR. It's facts.realtor, or you can go to nar.realtor, and there's a place you can click on that. But there's a ton of ways you can get information if you're just like, what are they talking about right now? But also, if you are wondering what are they talking about right now, please just go like stop everything you're doing and go like educate yourself for like the next month.
Maybe show up to a sales meeting or something. Like, where have you been?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, just on the off chance there's somebody out there going, what are they talking about? I mean, I just showed you that post from the Facebook group that somebody wants to sell a house in Turkey, even though they're only licensed in the U.S. What? Y'all, come on now. We got to be better than that. So you mentioned we are bringing someone in today. Who are we bringing in today?
We are bringing in a longtime friend of mine, Jessica Thomas. She is fabulous, and she has been working so hard here in the last, she's been working hard for a long time, but she's been working specifically on making sure that we all are prepared at the association and at the MLS level for these changes that are about to take place. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about that.
Does she have a role at KCRAR?
She does. So she is the treasurer of Heartland MLS, and she's also this year's chair of the Forms Committee. And because of her leadership position, she's also been taking a leadership role in accommodating some of these changes that are coming up. Obviously, there are some changes with forms that are going to take place, and I don't think that those things are completely ironed out just yet, but hopefully we can get the broad strokes from her today, and I really look forward to that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, I found really interesting as we go through this process is the way that the KCRAR forms are going to change. Those of us over on the Missouri side, just seeing the preview of some of the ways that our Missouri forms are changing. And I can at least speak to it from the Missouri side, not necessarily KCRAR side, because I'm not as involved anymore at KCRAR. I took a break, y'all, okay? It was fine.
Hey, me too.
But whenever California put their new forms out and the DOJ kind of jumped on California, we were like, oh, wait, have we made the right changes? Well, we have antitrust counsel on retainer right now, and so we can ship them. Okay, you see the DOJ is going after, California for their forms. Are our forms communicative in the way that the DOJ is going to want them to be? And I think that's the other thing that with all of this is, what have we done with the DOJ and why do they hate us so much? President Kevin Sears actually had a 92-minute sit down with them. No, actually, it was 102 minutes. Sorry, 102-minute sit down with the DOJ. I believe it was last week or the week before. He went into that, and he's still kind of processing how that went. But there's a lot of ground that we need to make up, and
To be clear, though, the DOJ kind of hates everybody right now.
100%. But we're like right in the the crosshairs.
Yeah, we're feeling it, but there are a lot of people that are feeling the DOJ right now. I think there are political ramifications for some of those. This isn't a political podcast either, but
we're being all the things
there
we're
are
not
people
today.
on both sides of the aisle that are feeling like the DOJ may be impacting their reelection prospects. So it's a thing.
Yeah,
so,
it really is a thing.
Yeah,
and it's got us into it, and We had a settlement with them about other things before, so it's like, how can we trust anything we say with them now that they're going to follow through with what they said? Because we're going to at least do what we said we were going to do. That's all we can do. We're responsible for ourselves.
Yeah, so many things to say that we can't say on a podcast. It's fine.
It's fine.
Hey,
guess what?
What? Oh, you have a thing.
I have a thing.
All right. Okay. Do Bobby's book bit. That was probably the most out of tune I've ever done that before, but it's okay. I jumped right
human.
into it.
I liked it.
Yeah.
It was fine with me.
I don't like being human.
Oh. Okay, he wants to be a cat, apparently. Casey, there we go. All right, so my book bit for today is A Curious Mind by Brian Grazer. And it's an homage to the power of asking questions, showing you how being curious can change your entire life. My quote from the book is, "Life isn't about finding answers. It's about asking questions." And I really like that quote because I've got a magnet that's on basically my desk at home, and I see it every single day. And it's, life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. And this book kind of goes into creating yourself by asking questions and being curious. And if the name Brian Grazer sounds familiar at all, he is the producer of A Beautiful Mind and a whole lot of other things. So there's some concepts behind the movie A Beautiful Mind that are in this A Curious Mind book. So the first lesson from the book is, a rule of business is that whoever... What the hell, Alex?
I'm so sorry. One of my favorite GIFs that I say GIF that I send
the girl with
to people. Yeah, well, no, it's the Beautiful Mind with his. He's calculating, he's seeing all of the things. Sorry.
All the calculations and the numbers.
Sorry. Yeah, my fault.
Yeah, we're good. All right. So as always, there are 3 lessons from the book. Lesson number 1 is, a rule of business is that whoever's the most curious wins. Curiosity not only fosters cooperation, but also connection. He leads mostly by asking questions instead of giving orders to other people. And he talks about, who would you rather buy a car from? The dealer who just touts the latest offers and how great the cars are? Or someone who asks you why you want to buy this car, what you need it for, where you'll go with it, what you're looking for? It's the same thing with our clients. We just don't tout out why a house is amazing and great and why you should buy it. What are your goals with purchasing this house? What does your family look like? What do you want, there to your future to look like? And does this fit into it, as opposed to just giving orders and telling someone what to do? The second lesson from the book is, everyone loves being asked and answering questions, including your loved ones. By showing interest, you can improve your relationships even with the best of your friends and your loved ones, because everyone loves being asked questions and to talk about themselves. So instead of rambling about yourself at the next party, start asking new people all about their story. Where did they grow up? What did they do for a living? How do you like it? It's one of my favorite things to do is when I start coaching new people is I make them tell me their life story, because I find life stories so fascinating. I tell them, take me back to when you were born and to all the way up until today and tell me the important things that have happened. For some people, that's like a 30-second little elevator clip. And for other people, you get like a 2-hour story. But I find it fascinating and learn a lot about people by just talking about themselves. And then finally, lesson 3, when it's time to stop asking and start doing, keep a seal on your curiosity. The only way to create something of value is to ignore new ideas every now and then, and it's up to you to know when that is, because sometimes we can get so wrapped up in all the different options that we don't ever make a decision and move forward on one. So sometimes you just need to shut your mouth. That's A Curious Mind by Brian Grazer.
Fun. That's a good one.
It was a little different.
I like it.
All right, should we go get Jessica and bring her in?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. Welcome back to Kansas City Real Talk, brought to you by KCRAR. And we are here with our guest today, Jessica Thomas, who is the KCRAR Forums Committee Chair. Thank you for being here with us today. We love having you here. Before we get into asking you some questions on some changes that are coming around, and everybody wants to talk about the forums because you guys just finished them up, but give us a little bit of your history. How did you get into real estate? How did you get involved with KCRAR? And how are you now the forums chair? What a great year to be forums chair.
Oh, it's so fun. So this is year 15 for me. And I got started with Dan Sweeney back when it was still Prudential Real Estate, before they were Better Homes and Gardens. And it's interesting that this was the year he retired, and he's still on Forums Committee. And I'm like, feel free to jump in and help me with this. And he was just like, I've paid my dues. I'm not doing that. But in addition to being Forums chair this year, which just I think was the nature of the volunteer work that I've done at KCRAR, I am also chair or treasurer of the MLS board this year. So to have that intersection of conversations during the settlement talks has been great. And I have always felt, and I think that came from the foundation with Dan, that you give back. And so that included to the realtor membership. So I have always volunteered pretty heavily with KCRAR. And then it was Alex who did the reach back to bring me into the board of director world. So his presidential year of the MLS board, I was his presidential appointee to the board. And then now I'm in it and I'm fully engrossed. And when the first court cases started really gearing up and and I was like, they're going to settle this right about the time of my presidential year. Never in a million years would I have thought, let's do it at the same time that you're treasurer and forms chair. So, but on the flip side, it's kind of been a blessing to be able to be at all of those conversations and, understand them. I know more about forms than I ever need to know for the rest of the duration of my career.
Well, as someone who was president during COVID, I completely understand, you being forms chair and MLS treasurer during this time. And you're really you're learning trial by fire. And
Yes.
what a better way to learn. Like that, I mean, seriously, you're going to know these forms way better than anybody else. So when we all have our questions, we're just going to look you up and start asking you all of the questions that we have. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
So I am actually also managing broker of Realty One Group Esteem and Liberty. And so my agents were like, so we can just come to you. And I was like, no, you're going to learn them as well as I do.
Yeah.
And you're going to spread the word that you know them as well as I do. So, it's one of those things where when the settlement announcement came out, we were sitting at KCRAR listening to the debate about the Royal Stadium, and that was already contentious. And then suddenly my phone starts blowing up, and I'm like, let's talk about that stadium some more.
Talk about that. I woke up to a couple of Zoom invites from NAR that happened overnight, and some of them starting like at 8:15 a.m. And I was like, something's going on. And I texted
Right.
Kevin Sears is one of my good friends, but I texted his brother and I go, what's happening? And he's like, sent me like the lip sealed emoji. And I was like, oh, it's going to be one. Like, I already knew that's how our day was going to go that day. But,
Yeah,
being in here longer,
it's
you
about
brought
to
up
be
your
fun.
agents and them wanting to rely on you, which I think this leads into a perfect way, because this seems to be the thing that people are the most up in arms about. But as you know, in the wake of the settlement, we are now required to have a written agreement with all of our buyers. What is that going to look like, and what kind of forms are KCRAR going to offer for that particular situation when we're meeting with a buyer for the first time?
The funny thing is that this is the one change that I feel like should not disrupt people, and it should make us better agents. And, because I have to tell people all the time is that you're worried about zipping on over and unlocking a door. I would like you to not run into a serial killer. So please get out of that habit. And you should have been having real buyer consultations anyway. So today, I mean, and that's the nice thing is that in my career, we've always been a buyer agency market. So I've never known anything different. Now, do I absolutely do buyer agency when I'm getting ready to write a contract, when I've been showing my cousins for 2 months? Absolutely. But I don't have any issue saying we got to pause and do this step differently. And I think that's how agents need to look at it, is that we are stopping and just pivoting the order of our steps. The steps shouldn't change. So right now we have two options for buyer agency. We have the exclusive and the non-exclusive. And when the forms roll out, we will have a third option, which is a limited services agreement. And it's basically saying I'm a transaction broker, but I am still entitled to compensation. And it's a shorter form. To be perfectly honest, it's not the best practice to me. I still want an exclusive agency. And I think a lot of agents have also forgotten you can do an exclusive agency for one house or for a weekend. I tell buyers all the time, we can date before we marry. You may decide you don't want to work with me either. And so, and again, I need agents to start doing consultations. Like our time and our mileage and our access is valuable. And so we should be thinking that we're not just giving it away and we're working with a ready, willing, and able buyer.
Yeah, no, you make an absolutely valid point there, is that this should be the easiest part of this for all of us, because buyer agency has already been required in Missouri. It's already been required in Kansas. But as we all know, for a lot of people, it just was a secondary form. Oh, while you're signing the contract, you're going to sign this other thing too. Even though I know for at least myself, I won't speak for anyone else. I was already operating by the bounds of what's inside a buyer agency agreement as far as fiduciary and confidentiality and all those other things, but not always necessarily communicating that with my consumers from the very beginning, but also having the expectation that they also owe me a duty of, uh, working together and not, calling everybody around. But the fact that we can make this for a single property, or we can make this for a single day or a weekend, we can make this work however, but I think that people get lost in that. Oh, if somebody's not going to be, locked into me for 6 months. Well, we're not asking you to be locked into me for 6 months.
Right. You can be locked in right here at the doorstep if that's the way that you're going to operate your business. But the one thing that I do like about the limited services agreement is that it makes a clear distinction of what, as a buyer, you're not getting. So if I am using that limited services agreement, you don't get a fiduciary. You don't get you're getting somebody who's going to open the door. I can't advise, I can't consult you on the best things to do. But what I like about that is that it should be an easy conversation to pivot to an exclusive.
Yeah.
Because a buyer should say, whoa, no, I do want you to do these things. And I want to be able to ask you these questions and everything and be able to get that service. So again, the best practice is still going to be the exclusive buyer agency, I think.
Yeah. And I think you will discover some buyers that think they want that limited. I know everything. I found the house myself on the internet. I just need somebody to let me in the door. And then whenever they get into the nuts and bolts of it, ooh, I do need some more help. So now we need to move over to this other document and to move there.
Yep.
Well, the commercial agents have been doing that for a long time, and that's the way that it works in commercial. And as far as I can tell, my friends that are in the commercial side of the business do just fine, and they still make money. And I still feel that there are people that are concerned about the level of transparency that this is going to provide. That transparency has always been there for commercial agents. And I think that's the important thing. We need to show that we're stronger in transparency.
So the buyer agency agreement today basically says my commission is X% or whatever's in MLS, whichever is greater. And so, of course, that's the language that has to come out. And so a buyer's agent is going to say, here's what my compensation is going to be. And yeah, in the buyer agency, it can be a percentage, it can be a flat fee, whatever. But when it's time to write a contract, a purchase agreement, we are asking the seller to pay that compensation in the contract. And this is a pivotal change because there's no other place where compensation is memorialized after MLS removes shared compensation. So in the contract right today on the residential contract where we would do closing costs, and additional seller expenses, there is now a line item that says seller to pay broker assisting buyer. And so that is where the compensation is going to be. There was some struggle on that should be a percentage. So like for future amendments and all of that, but that whole page is math and flat numbers. And again, as Alex is pointing out, is that is fully transparent. So even if I'm the listing agent and I'm working with the unrepresented buyer, I don't want that unrepresented buyer to think I'm not getting paid for this because there's no agency agreement with that unrepresented buyer. So it's still memorialized in the contract. And so to Alex's point, commercial's been doing that for years. I have literally had agents go, that's against license law. And I'm like, go back to your books. It's the same license. We operate, there's no commercial law license. And really and truly, the conversations that I've had at this point are this is new and I don't like it. Well, when are we not dealing with change? So that part, I'm like, okay, talk to me about something that you actually have a question about, because if it's just that it's new and I don't like it, suck it up, buttercup. That's really all I got at this point.
It's new and I don't like it is basically every day of real estate. Like, I mean, right. I've been in this industry since I was 8. I think I've seen it all. And yet yesterday something happened that I've never seen before. And I'm just like, how are we still experiencing new? But there's going to be change. There's going to be new. Now, so far we've brought up the changes in the buyer agency agreement, the limited service, the full, exclusive buyer agency, discussing compensation in there. We've discussed that cooperative compensation is being removed from the MLS. There is no field for that. We've also covered that there will now be a space in the contract for compensation for a buyer's agent that's going to be a numerical value, not a percentage value. We've not discussed the seller agency contract. Is cooperative compensation being removed from the seller agency contract?
Absolutely. So, and that is the biggest change. So 2 things I want to point out is that when we got done with that piece and the forms went to our antitrust attorney who works with several MLSs, he basically said that it was the best among a lot of the forms he had seen. and that we had done a great job at shielding us for future litigation and DOJ inquiries because we were more transparent. And we've basically decoupled commissions, which we know. I mean, and in the guidance of the committees for the forms, I didn't want to focus on what the DOJ is going to do. The way that we did it, so on the new exclusive right to sale and every other listing agreement contract we have, I am saying to seller, the listing broker gets paid this. There is a number, there is a flat amount, there is a percentage, however you want to do it. We still kept that field of other compensation, which I really don't, I've always hated that, but it's there for anybody who's worrying about that. And then there is a disclaimer basically that says buyers may, but you are not required to, ask for compensation for their broker in a purchase agreement. And the seller has two options: to tell us that they are willing to consider it or that they're not willing to consider it. There is no number. And if they say, yes, they are willing, then they are giving us permission to disclose. So that language looks very similar to the multiple offers, whether or not you can disclose terms, the existence of or existence and terms. So, but again, there's no number. Now, in practice, you want a number, you have that conversation with your seller. Brokers want to put in a number, you have that conversation with your seller. The best practice is, let me show you on estimated proceeds what this is probably going to look like. I know as the one who's signing the yard what I'm going to get paid. And let me anticipate what a buyer's agent may ask. So the estimated proceeds will be where you can demonstrate what it could look like, what those scenarios look like. But on the exclusive right to sale, the person whose compensation is negotiated and discussed is the listing broker.
Well, and I think it is important to note that, and this has been true forever, that there are lots of different companies in the Kansas City marketplace that use their own forms, right?
Yep.
And none of these rule changes keep somebody from deciding to put together their own forms. These forms are provided and have always been provided for the broker's benefit if they do not have their own form to use. It is a benefit of being attached to KCRAR, just like Realist is. And it's possible that you never log into Realist and never use that resource. You might not ever use this one either, but these are here for you if you need them. And I think that's a critical point as well.
Yeah.
So you should talk to your broker about what your forms are going to look like.
Mm-hmm. The other piece of it to that end is that these weren't made in a vacuum. The settlement task force represented small brokers, large brokers, appraisers, lenders and title were, consulted on a couple of changes, and KCRAR counsel. And then when we thought we were finished, they went to the antitrust attorney too. So there's not anybody that can say, oh, I wrote this form and they approved it and it's, a done deal. Now, the forms today are done. And I'm sure that we will be opening up the floodgate soon for feedback and all of that, but you're done.
One question I have, because I think it's important to clarify, in those boxes that you've got where the seller can mark that they want to disclose that they would like to offer compensation or would be open to paying compensation, or that they would not be, does that keep a buyer's agent from writing something into the contract?
No, because here's the thing. Today, the seller can say, I want a list price of $500,000. And if you sit on the market and you finally get an offer of $450,000, they consider it. So, and I think it's a case by case scenario, because again, what's the marketplace going to do? That old school training, all of the trainers that will tell you the market decides the value of your house. So, and that's not going to be any different. The contracts are going to have blanks to fill out, and they get filled out, and the seller can determine whether or not they like what's in the blanks.
There you go. So manage your seller's expectations when you're filling out that part of the
Absolutely.
exclusive, for sure.
Well, it's just like the fact that a seller can say, I will not consider a home warranty as a part of, the agency agreement. And then a buyer can still ask for whatever. Buyer can ask for whatever they want to ask for.
That's right.
The seller's going to make the same decision, but there was some pre-knowledge that, they may not consider it. Alex brought up other forms, but particularly brokerages creating their own forms. Another set of forms that we have to use, particularly if you're on the Missouri side or the Kansas side, are those state provided forms for you. Kansas City is this weird area where we have like multiple different versions of forms that we can choose from everything. In the past, and I won't speak to Kansas forms because I'm not licensed in Kansas. I have not seen any of their changes. I'm not versed in Kansas forms at all. Missouri forms, I will. In the past, KCRAR and Missouri Realtor forms have been fairly similar. Different links and different, paragraphs and things like that, but fairly similar. For the first time
very
ever,
divergent now.
they are very, very divergent. And I don't believe, and we never should have commingled forms anyways. That was always a huge deal to me, but some people still do it. I don't think that there's any way foreseeably going forward we can ever commingle forms again. And people need to understand the differences between the two because they are vastly, vastly different. Can you go to at a high level, any of the differences between Missouri forms and KCRAR forms?
Yeah. So, and interestingly enough, like Amy Volts and I have scheduled time to look at what that looks like because we need to consider the chapters that still use those state forms in some of the rural areas. They can marry. So I think that we will still have mixed forms because what happens if somebody uses a Missouri exclusive right to sell, but they get an offer on a KCRAR contract. So we're actually going to spell that out when we start teaching the classes and teaching the forms and everything, because it needs to happen. So, and I apologize, I have not spent a whole lot of time on the Kansas forms yet. I've seen them. And really at a glance, Alex, maybe let me know if you agree. Kansas basically did commissions are negotiable and not fully set by law, and they didn't make many other changes.
Yeah, I think Kansas just drew a hard line on following exactly what the settlement stated,
Yeah.
which that I think that's, you have to remember that all of these associations have their own attorneys and they're going to make their own decisions, which I think is important that happens. I don't think that it should be. I don't think that we should even pretend like everybody should do the exact same thing, because that's how we ended. That appearance is how we ended up here, right? And so I think it's healthy that there are differences. And yeah, the Kansas forms, they seem to just follow exactly the terms of the settlement and no other changes. We're taking it 3 or 4 steps further than we had to, according to the settlement. Mm-hmm. Which is that's a different option, right?
And the Missouri forms go into effect on the 29th of July that agents can start using them. Missouri did the same thing where compensation will be part of the contract, but it's an addendum. And they still have the option in that addendum to determine who is paying the buying broker, if it's the listing broker sharing compensation or if the seller is paying the buyer broker and so it's a checkbox. So again, there is possibility for that to work. But then on the flip side, if I have a KCRAR listing and I get a Missouri contract, then, what does that look like? But we're going to kind of spell those out, And again, a lot of that does kind of follow what commercial has done for years. But I do think, especially for the chapters and the smaller brokers using state forms, that not only do they need to be aware of the changes, but they need to be aware of what happens when you commingle the forms.
Jessica, we're getting close towards the end of your time, and I'm not even sure how 30 minutes just completely flew past. You brought up Missouri forms and those going live July 29th. If we have not been living under a rock, we know that August 17th is the date that's been set by the settlement. What exactly is happening August 17th? We're just going to all vanish into the air with rapture. And are there any other key dates that people need to be aware of?
Yes. Okay. So there are going to be 2 amendments to a current and enforced agency agreements that will come out August 5th. So if you're going to sign a listing on August 10th, you can go ahead and get the amendment that has a future effective date signed too, and you don't have to double back to your seller or buyer client in that scenario. And if they go under contract prior to shared compensation coming out of MLS, you don't need the amendment. So our KCRAR's date is August 14th. That is when shared compensation comes out of the MLS. And because of the craziness with the forms are effective and will be also able to use on August 14th. Because the old forms are going to be sunset and come out. They don't make sense if shared compensation is not in MLS or if it is in MLS, vice versa. So on that date, what we know is the compensation fields today. on the office tab of the input screen, those come out. The other thing that is critically important is that if you have something under contract, you need to pull the MLS sheet and have record of that for your compliance and auditing team. So, because that is how compensation is being memorialized. And so I think the thing is, at this point, hopefully, even for the people sleeping under a rock, they kind of know something is coming. So KCRAR, August 14th for no compensation, and then new forms. So, and everything needed to be done by August 17th. So we wanted to make sure we got done early.
So it's the 14th that the fields come off.
14th that the fields come off. The two
And-
amendments that people can use ahead of time will be August 5th, but brokers will start seeing the forms this week so they can start talking about them in their sales meeting. They can start discussing with their agents what it's going to look like. And also this week, agents and brokers will see the calendar for classes at KCRAR and get to witness the dynamic that is Alex and I firsthand and in person.
That's going to be
Quite a few
fun.
classes. All of the classes that will be available between Leawood and Northland will also have Zoom and virtual options to attend.
You know, are you a pacer? Do you like to pace, Jessica?
When I teach, yes.
Yeah, I'm
gonna
walking
run a
all
marathon.
over that classroom. We're going to be running into each other. Nobody's going to see either of us if they're watching on Zoom. I'm in the aisles. I'm running up and down.
Put your Fitbit on. We'll see how many steps we get
Yeah.
with each class.
Yeah.
This is going to be
Yeah,
crazy.
All right.
We're going to need a live camera to keep track of us. Or we're going to need a cameraman.
I'll
in
wear
there.
the GoPro and then
There you go.
so we'll figure that
I like
out.
it.
Amber. So we'll get him a leash and make sure he actually sits down, and we'll do it like a panel discussion, Alex, and we'll be still for one class.
Oh, God. Maybe for the broker.
I like
So,
it.
All right.
All
other
right.
thing of note too is that brokers will be able to invite their compliance and their in-house trainers and stuff to those first few brokerage classes too. So,
Which I would
'cause-
strongly recommend, because thinking through all of this, that is where I'm most focused on, is making sure that the compliance departments all have this stuff figured out, because it's going to be amendment city for a little while.
Oh, God.
I just
Yeah.
think that's
So many
So-
amendments. All the amendments. Every contract's going to have like 17 amendments. It's fine.
yeah.
Jessica,
So
thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you. Most importantly, thank you for everything you've been doing. You didn't expect to take this on as your year, but you're taking it on with a huge smile on your face, and we love the attitude. So just thank you so much.
you're welcome. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it so much.